Hiya, we're here in lovely St. James Park in London to bring you another video in the 7 Deadly Sins of Modernity video series. Today we're going to be talking about language. Now I highly recommend you check out the Fry and Laurie video sketch on language. I'll put a link in there somewhere, it's fantastically funny. What we're talking about here today is simplistic language, blunt language which is dead, spiritually dead. The same way that if you use a knife a lot, you've got to sharpen it after a while. We've got to sharpen our language so that it can be dynamic, it can be alive. I'm not necessarily talking about accurate or precise language, I'm talking about living language. And we'll be investigating how we go about this. But first, let's try to understand what language is and what the world is. For this, we turn to an Austrian philosopher called Ludwig Wittgenstein. And before you click away, because already his name is boring, let me tell you the name of his book, which is called the Tractatus Logico-Philosophicus. What a pretentious title. And yet I do love him. I do love his book. It's full of wonderful insight about the world, and I want to share a bit of that with you today. What Wittgenstein says is that first we have to try to define what the world is. Now he says, I can make propositions, right? I can say, this is a bench, that is a road, these are flowers and plants behind me. These are propositions, clear propositions. And I can make propositions such as historical ones. Churchill lived this and this long. I can also make propositions which are false. For example, Himalayas are not the tallest mountains in the world. Well, they are, so it's a false proposition. It's a proposition, but it doesn't correspond to a true fact. Or I can make a proposition, for example, Harry Potter wears glasses. Now this is true in a sense, and yet Harry Potter doesn't exist. And so it again doesn't correspond to a fact in the clearest sense of the word. And so, if we imagine that I can make statements about anything which exists and anything which is a fact, then it seems to us pretty obvious that we can define the world as the totality of facts. The world is the totality of things about which I can make pointing, accurate propositions that are true. Now, why is this important? This is important because what we must realize is that when discussing why and how a language is meaningful, we have to talk about propositions. What is a proposition? Well, I can say 2 + 2 is 4 in English. I can make the same statement in French. It's going to be true in both cases, and it can be translated. So there seems to be an underlying proposition which doesn't have to be either in English or French. In a sense, there is an essence underneath all languages, a logical structure underneath all forms of communication, which allows this level of translatability, an underlying logical structure. And there are many things which are not necessarily language, which are in fact linguistic in the same sense. Road signs are linguistic. A painting can be linguistic in the sense that they have propositions, they are propositional. They communicate a meaning which can be translated. And so now we've established that what we're dealing with here is the underlying propositions. We must ask the question, how does a proposition interact with reality? One possible explanation that Wittgenstein offers us is that language is a mirror of reality, a picture of reality. And what he means by this is that we've established that there are logical forms in reality, in the sense that this bench is here and it's in relationship to the ground. So I can make a statement about the relationship. The bench is on the ground. So I said, the bench is. That's a statement of fact. The ground is a statement of fact. They have a relationship. Bench is on the ground. So we can see how we can break down language to statements of fact, as in this thing exists. And we can break down language to relationships. This bench is, the ground is, they are together, right? And so what we've established is that there are these atomic facts. This is, that is, I am. and then there are these relationships which bind them together, and from these atomic facts make molecular sentences. And so if language has an underlying structure, I mean reality has an underlying structure, Wittgenstein says that what language does is it merely mimics, replicates the underlying structure. When I say the statements about the bench and the ground, there is the logical structure of the facts, and my language is merely a mirror image of the logical structure of those. It's like a ruler. I take a ruler with the lines pointing out, the hairs of the ruler, and it touches reality. It never actually touches, but it points to it. It comes ever so close. Language never actually touches reality, but it points to it. It almost touches it. And now, let's ask the question. Can I make a statement about my statement about reality? Well, if my first statement was merely a mirror image of the underlying facts, then if I make a statement about my statement, then that is going to be merely a mirror image of the mirror image. There is going to be no new information given. It is merely a repetition of the same underlying structure. And so if the world is the totality of facts, language can only mirror the world. Can facts be meaningful? Well, no. Now this is where it becomes truly interesting, because what we've established is that if language is meaningful because it corresponds to the underlying logical structure of things, then it can never say anything new. And yet we perceive things which are beautiful, which are meaningful, which are valuable, which don't seem to correspond to anything, in the real world at least. If I say, the magnificent sky, I mean, this is a value judgment in a sense. Where is the magnificence? Where is the underlying structure of magnificence in the sky? Now, here's a question. What value or meaning is there in a fact? 2 + 2 = 4. What value is there in that? Or just 5, the number 5. There is no value in there. The only reason it might be meaningful is because, for example, when I was 5 years old, this and this happened. You see, value and meaning come to us as a context, as a set of associations with these facts, and yet it's not contained in the fact. And so if all language is a series of facts, and facts in and of themselves cannot contain meaning, then it is impossible for meaning and value and beauty to be in the world. It must transcend it, because if the world is the totality of facts, and language can describe all of the totality of facts but nothing more, and yet I find language meaningful in the sense that this is a beautiful sunshine, this is a lovely bench, beautiful flowers, lovely day, gorgeous painting, I am in love, all these things. These things in a way aren't simply facts, and thus they must transcend the world. They must be above it, beyond it. And language isn't capable of being accurate or clear or concise about this. Wittgenstein says about this topic, he says, and on that which we cannot be precise, we must consign to silence. Now this is obviously very wrong. It is only those things which we cannot be accurate about, which we cannot be precise about, which do not have an underlying logical structure, which are worth talking about in the first place. What this means is that to speak meaningfully about the world, to imbue it with meaning, and to capture the depths and the glory of what it means to be human, is an undertaking which is not scientific and cannot be scientific, which cannot be reduced to quantities and facts. Rationality comes in here somewhat, but at the end we must remember that under meaningful language there is nothing but a gaping chasm, an abyss. We are not secured in speaking meaningfully. And so this comes in to what Kierkegaard talks about, and Camus to an extent, Dostoevsky too, about the nature of our existence here. Now, what they say is that we come into this world ab initio, as a start, anxious. Anxiety is not a condition which you develop because life is hard. Anxiety is the default state of life. This is quite... it's fine, it's fine. Let's continue. That imagine a child in a shopping mall. It must have happened to you. You're a child in a shopping mall or somewhere away in a park with your parents, and your father or your mother says, wait here, I'll be back in 5 minutes. But if you get lost or if you get scared, do nothing, just stay here. I will come and find you. I mean, you try to explain it to them, you know, you really give it a try. They tried to explain it to me. And anyway, 3-4 minutes goes by, my father hasn't come back, and I realize I'm alone. Not only am I alone here, I am alone in this world. There's nothing to protect me. This world is dangerous. I'm lost entirely. And this existential dread, this panic comes over me. Comes over any child. It's completely natural. Because for us as children, the only defensive structure, the only way of interpreting the world around us and making it meaningful, the only thing which grounds us into a sense of stability is our parents. Now, obviously, I don't have the same problems most often because I've come to inhabit new spaces, new ways of articulating this life and making order out of the fundamental nonsensical nature of it, the absurdity of it. I have a job most of the time. I have friends, you know. I have institutions and worldviews which ground me into this reality. But what we've already seen is that these things are good in making us not anxious, in ordering the world around us so that we think that we can go about it in a natural way. Yet what we've seen is that because these structures are meaningful and they're not just facts, they're a way of meaningfully ordering the world, is that they are not grounded in anything either. There is no underlying structure which underpins them. There cannot be, because they are meaningful. They're not just correspondences to facts. They cannot be. And so, what we've seen is that to inhabit this world, we must create orders around us, ideologies, cosmologies of making sense of the world. Now, these things are not necessarily, they are in flux, always moving. In a sense, we can think of language as being the ripples in a water, or the way that sunlight hits the water and bounces off those ripples. It just bounces off, hits it, and enters my eye. Reality is there, it's always in flux. It's never stable, and there's great depths and chaos underneath it. All my language can do is reflect of the eddies and the tops of it. It's beautiful, but it's unsecured. And so let's go all the way back to the beginning now and talk about banal language, simplistic language, business language, ideological, political talking points, or simply cliches. Now, what I'm saying is that these things are necessary for us to order the world, but they are not necessary as they are there. They are simplistic. They ground us into a reality where we are stationary, dead spiritually. We must go out and define the world. We must go out and have adventures and act and come up with a new language. And this is a dangerous task because you're always walking into a chaos. You're walking into something which is undefined and cannot be defined. And in this sense, to speak originally, to speak meaningfully, and to explore new ground, to come up with your own language, is a heroic undertaking if there ever was one. And that is the antidote to today's sin. To go out and heroically make your language meaningful. Thank you.